Argentina defaults on its debt for the ninth time this millennium, 17 trillion US dollars worth of government debt with no funds back in their maturity, and we also discuss just how far the world economy ship can sail before sinking deeper than ever. Welcome to World Wild Economy. Every week, especially this week, I love sitting down after a long week of hard work at the office and just kind of reminiscing of the worrisome state of our economy. But nonetheless, I've got some positive news, and that is our indices. So this week, the S&P 500 rose 2%, breaking a few weeks worth of losses. Nasdaq Composite rose 1.8%. The WIG 20 also rose 2.4%. So it can be seen that amidst all economic turmoil, there is clearly still some room for growth in the prices of stocks, putting them to be, even more overvalued than ever, obviously in respect to companies' earnings and returns in general. This week's recommended reads are Remittances, the hidden engine of globalisation. It's an article I found on the Financial Times. Definitely recommend it. In emerging economies, the money sent back home by migrants now exceeds foreign direct investment, FDI, and has fueled the expansion of countries like Mexico, wherein remittances make up 2.8% of its GDP. Countries in Africa and Southeastern Asia, like the Philippines, for example, are also mildly dependent on these inflows. It is a great read with some amazing graphics and data presentation especially, so I definitely sincerely recommend that you guys check it out. Also, just to quickly mention what I said in the header of the show, essentially there is now a total of 17 US dollars worth of governmental debt in the world, that is unaccounted for. So this means that governments give out bonds for which, for obviously for your money, and they pay that back plus the interest over time after a certain period of time. So there are now many bonds for which worldwide governments cannot reimburse you for. So what do investors do? Do they hold overvalued stocks or unbacked bonds? People are eager to sell both and just simply get out. So it is now only a matter of time before the great sell-off occurs. With these bonds for which governments can't pay you back for, there's obviously going to be a lot of people willing to sell, very little people willing to buy. So it appears that there might be some sort of stalemate or maybe something even more. So we'll have to wait and see. Okay, so I'll simply just jump into what this whole show is about, and essentially, the world economic ship, and exactly how long can it sail for? Anyways, we're at a point now wherein everyone knows stocks are overvalued. U.S. stocks, especially, actually, in regards to returns and the kind of GDP growth that we see, and with this kind of being common knowledge, it seems like everyone's just waiting for the tipping point to sell and leave the market. But until then, all that everyone is doing is waiting, watching, speculating, analyzing, and what's most important, just holding onto their investment in this whole thing, not letting them go until the last minute. I was actually speaking to my dad about this yesterday, and I posed the question of what event could act as a trigger for a global recession and really, the beginning of a major sell-off, if it perhaps, hasn't even happened already, to be honest. Bond markets have seen crazy inflows of money, which I mentioned either on last week's show or before, alongside the general trend towards more fixed income assets, even with the yields being very low. And recently, one of the US bonds yields actually being lower than the dividend stocks that you can get on the US. It's a bit of a weird scenario that we're in. Anyways, his metaphor was on the lines of something like this. Imagine yourself a big stack of seeds where, there's a few birds feasting on it. They're eating the seeds and will continue to do so until they're scared off, until the farmer comes. He pulls the trigger, shoots the gun up into the air, there's a loud gunshot, they all fly away. The birds, like many investors, they will only react to the gunshot. Well, in our case, with the global markets, what will be the gunshot that scares away investors from feasting on the investments, fixed income, equity markets, whatever? Well, I've actually compiled a few economic, political, and geopolitical factors which can all boil down to, or essentially individually potentially trigger what we may call the next big crash, really cause the tipping point. So in no particular order, obviously just a few examples here: Argentinian debt default and disorder. So following the Argentinian stock and bond markets drop, subsequently causing a fall in the Argentinian currency, Argentina is now in a weird spot wherein they have to restructure over 100 billion US dollars worth of debt after failing to sell some short-term bonds, which would secure them the funds to pay off the kind of debt that they have to pay off this year. In other words, they have no money to pay back their debts, which may lead to a default if they're not in that stage already, and the country will essentially require some sort of bailout. A similar case of fiscal mismanagement, which is very popular, was seen in Greece. The effect of which was actually magnified by the 2008 recession. Just this morning, actually, I watched a 5-minute clip by, I think it was the Plain Bagel on YouTube, which went into some detail and recapped over the kind of crash that I just spoke about, or essentially Greece's crash and crisis. So it's a great recap if you want to watch. Just a very short 5-minute video. I certainly recommend it. Anyways, Argentina's falling credit rating leaves them in a pickle, to say the least. And actually, this isn't the first time Argentina has put themselves in this position. Actually, not the second or not the third. Wait, this will be, in fact, the 9th time Argentina has defaulted on its debt since the turn of the millennium alone. Prime example, which will be studied, no doubt, in class of how not to run a country. Just as the saying goes, fool me 8 times, shame on me. Fool me 9 times, I tend to forget the rest, whatever. Second, Hong Kong and the fight for autonomy. China has been increasing its reach and influence over the borders of Hong Kong. And since the beginning of the protests a few months back, economic activity and growth and everything has stalled. It's as if time has frozen still. It's absolutely horrifying to see China's totalitarian regime be spread across a prosperous nation. Protesters have been getting arrested, they have started vanishing, and there's not a doubt in mind that at the same time, China's prisons and detention camps have seen an inflow of so-called criminals. After recently reading the book 1984 by George Orwell, if you haven't read it, I definitely recommend it. It makes me sick to death of what we are seeing actually happen in real life whilst only being able to watch it from the sidelines. Trump was actually meant to fly and pay a visit to Poland. However, it has recently been said that it's been cancelled. The reason given was of a hurricane happening or about to strike Florida, a very important US state from the kind of political perspective at least. And it is actually reasonable to assume it has something to do with Trump actually having to be on the ground in the US, since the Chinese have just a few days ago started moving tanks into Hong Kong. A no-deal Brexit amidst democratical turmoil has created levels of unseen-before uncertainty. In cities like London, fresh produce is hard to see at a normal price and availability. For London and cities wherein much of the supply is actually made up on foreign goods which are imported, thanks to EU's trade deals, people have begun to stockpile certain goods. Stagflation is getting exaggerated by fears of worse things to come. And with Boris Johnson suspending parliament, protesters have gathered and collectively been voicing their opinions on the undemocratic nature of the suspension, saying it's been a coup and whatever. I'm not stating my opinion, just saying this is what is happening. Very interesting topic to debate upon. With the great British pound not being so great anymore, the unsensical national politics has been driving away business, goods, and the hope for a bright future. I love the irony in the let's just say, not so democratic election of Boris Johnson for the champion, leading UK through Brexit, of which the main slogan or one of the main reasons was to get rid of the influence of unelected elites over in the European Union, funnily enough. The 5-week parliament suspension will drive Britain headfirst into Brexit, and in the end, it will probably just end up being placed in one of those Russian car crash videos on YouTube showcasing the freak accident that is Brexit with an idiot behind the wheel. Lastly, a common topic, obviously, throughout the show, it's the US-China trade war. I bloody love this topic. Anyways, the trade war, the trade dispute, whatever you might want to call it, has been a pillar of global trade slowdown, that slowdown of economic growth on a global stage. And, it's been a pillar of uncertainty levels, as if they were representing some sort of heartbeat. And, of course, this show, worldwide economy. There's no indication of how long it will last, how soon this will intertwine with the protests with Hong Kong, and if it will ever be resolved at all. But anyways, for now, I thank you very much for watching. Again, I wish you a great week ahead, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye. If you do wish to check out more of what I have to provide, check out investingintellect.com and Investing Intellect on Instagram. Blogs, graphs, and other visual content are all available on these platforms. For feedback and inquiries, feel free to message me or email me in the links provided. Thank you.